So good evening to all students. So we welcome Rodrigo J. CASIANO. He is basically, requested our accepted our request that he would like to share his experience. I would like to give his introduction that he has total more than 12 years of experience and 10 years in management as an accounting professional, and he earned the US Certified Management Accountant title with a the dream score of 480 out of 500, which is around 96 percentage, and he will be receiving the ICMA Gold Medal in the US. So he has got a strong background in general accounting, financial controlling, tax compliance, internal and external audit, and currently he is leading 140 strong R2R record to report team in Accenture Philippines. And he started his professional career in SGV and Company, a member of practice of ENY, and thereafter held various regional and global finance and accounting roles. There is a long description is there. He has achieved a lot of things like in his life. So welcome, Rodrigo. We would like you to share your experience, and this is a remarkable score, that is 480 out of 500, and our Indian students would like to listen to you, right, and gain some experience from your whatever your achievement.
Thank you so much, Haresh. Good evening to all our students and future CMAs in the Zoom meeting. So it's really an honor to join you here tonight, and I'll be able to share some of my experience and also some tips in taking the CMA exam. So let me quickly share my screen.
Yeah. Just give me 1 minute.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, you can share your screen now. Thank you.
All right. So let me. So I'll be giving you a glimpse of my CMA journey, and also share about my experience in taking the CMA exam. But before that, I'm not sure if everyone already knows about the CMA certification for that matter. So let me also give you a brief background of CMA. So what is CMA? Certified Management Accountant. So it's a globally recognized professional certification. So it's different from our other local accounting certifications where it only applies locally or within our country, our state. But for this one, even if it's US CMA, it applies in over 140 countries globally. So that when you pass it and you are able to be certified as a CMA, you can go to any other country, to the US, for example, and still be recognized as a CMA. This distinguishes you and us as CMA professionals because it demonstrates strategic thinking and really being able to make sense of the numbers beyond what we record, what we report in a normal accounting role. So that CMAs are often known as great storytellers because we're able to really give context and really tell a story about what the numbers are and what does it mean to the organization, to the leadership, to management, so that they can make great decisions, database decisions. So as you become a CMA, of course, you'll become part of a global Oh, sorry, I think I got muted. So anyway, when you become a CMA, you'll become part of a global network of finance and accounting professionals. There are already over 100,000 globally now. And in fact, the 100,000 CMA here is Abdul Nasser Parkar, who's coming from Qatar. So imagine that network that you'll be part of once you become a CMA. And also, the program itself, the certification itself is already 50 years. So it started in 1972, and now actually this year is a very good year for all CMAs. We are celebrating the 50th year of the title of the certification. So another milestone this year. So then why CMA? Because by becoming a CMA, of course, you are demonstrating your mastery of at least 12 core areas, core practice in finance and accounting. Later on, once I get to the CMA exam structure, you'll also see a glimpse of what are those core areas that we become more master of. And then, of course, you'll also be demonstrating the competency of a CMA professional as defined by IMA, or the Institute of Management Accountant. So that goes beyond the 12 core areas of practice to include also some of the other critical skills such as leadership and also professional ethics and values. And according to the latest survey of IMA, this is based on 2021 Global Salary Survey, CMAs in general, globally, on the average, earns some premium in terms of the salary. So that's 58% salary advantage for CMA professionals. So it's really a very prestigious and also a very attractive certification to pursue. So now, just very quickly on my journey, although Haresh also briefly talked about some of my experiences. So I'm really, by profession, an accountant, in fact, a certified public accountant here in the Philippines. But as I've mentioned, being a CPA here in the Philippines does not mean I'm a CPA outside the country. So it's confined here within my country. But being a CMA, I am a CMA globally. So I started my career in SGV, that's the local Ernst Young in the Philippines, as an external auditor. So that was my first experience of audit, in particular doing assurance work. And then shortly after, I joined Procter and Gamble. So at Procter and Gamble, I explored more roles within finance and accounting that includes, aside from the core accounting work, that includes tax compliance, more of a regional tax compliance work. And then my last role in P&G was in internal audit under the global internal audit. That's why I'm also a certified internal auditor. And internal audit is also actually part of the coverage of CMA, because it's also important that we're looking at controls while we are also analyzing, doing our strategic planning and similar activities. So while working, I also pursued my MBA on the side. So I graduated from the Ateneo de Manila University. And after my stint in P&G, I moved to Diageo. So if the brand is not so familiar, perhaps some of the products are. So Diageo is the owner, manufacturer of some of the whiskey drinks like Johnny Walker. So in Diageo, I perform more of a financial controller role. So beyond just the closing of books, the actual results, we also manage the budget, and therefore also doing all those budget and variance analysis to see where we have opportunities and also risks, so we can partner and plan with management in dealing with those risks and opportunities. So my current role now is I'm with Accenture. So a little bit of a deviation from manufacturing entities to now service entity, where we provide finance and accounting work to other entities globally also. So I'm covering record to report, procure to pay, and also order to cash teams in Accenture. And on the side, I'm now also teaching in the undergrad in the university, some accounting courses as part of my career. So that's a little bit of my background and where I'm coming from. So when I took the CMA exam, I was already done with university for almost, I think, 10 years. So I'm not sure about in India, but in the Philippines, when I was still in the university, we know about the CMA program, but it's not that popular. Most of the young accountants really would pursue CPA, or the Certified Public Accountant certification. It's only until in recent years that it's becoming more and more popular, and also organizations are seeing more value about becoming a CMA. So that also myself, as part of the IMA chapter in the Philippines, so the Institute of Management Accountants in the Philippines, I'm also actively joining campaigns to promote the certification to students, so that as early as being in the university, they can already sort of learn about the program and really help plan their career on becoming a CMA later. So I'm actually the vice chair for the Student Chapter Relations Committee of the IMA in the Philippines. So if you look at the CMA exam, there are two parts, part one and part two, and these are the coverage of both exams. So you'll see here that the coverage is really comprehensive. It's not just the core accounting uh, areas that we do or we have learned in the university, but it also involves some other critical areas of practice, including focus on internal controls for that matter, to ensure that once we do our strategic analysis, strategic planning activities, we don't only consider financially uh, the impact of the activities, but also see where we have some opportunities in terms of strengthening the control environment. The latest addition is technology and analytics, that is also to recognize that technology nowadays is becoming more and more important, and even in the practice of accounting, because it's already becoming more embedded in the business operations. So we as accountants, as management accountants for that matter, need to learn more about this and really be able to marry accounting and technology. And then for the second part, you'll see here the basic financial statement analysis, also risk management in particular, and then ethics. So ethics is also very important in CMA. Just like all other professions, we are expected to demonstrate and to practice, of course, ethics and our core values as professionals, of course, to the highest level. So if you look at the two, and this is a common question I also get. So when do I take part one and part two? What part should I take first? So actually, in the CMA exam, uh, there's no particular order that's required. You can take part one first. You can take part two first. So it really depends on you. And perhaps my tip for you is to consider what perhaps is your uh, strength in terms of looking at the various coverage of part one and part two. So if you look at the coverage of part one, it deals heavily on accounting topics. Compared to part two, it's more of finance topics. So we have your corporate finance and also FS analysis and investment analysis or capital budgeting. So part two is a little heavy on finance, corporate finance, and then part one is a little heavy on accounting. So perhaps you make that assessment, which part you are more comfortable to take first and you are more confident to take first, because of course when you get the first part and then you pass the first part, you become really more confident when you take the second part. So in my case, I took part one first because I was already working that time, and most of my work experience really evolved around accounting more than finance. So I felt that my strength is really, and the experience that I have was really more on accounting. So I was more confident about part one than part two. So I took part one first and then part two. And then your next question might be, when do you get both parts? So, or each of the part. So there's an exam window. There are 3 exam windows every year to take the CMA exam. And you can decide whether you'll just take one part in one window and then the other part in the next window. Or you can also choose to take both parts in one window. So what's the benefit if you take both parts in one window? Well, for one, you're done. You're done with both parts. So it you don't delay the the sacrifice of studying and preparing for the exam. So the second would be if you want to become a CMA awardee, to receive or to be eligible to receive the gold medal, silver medal, or the bronze medal, that means you will receive the top 3 highest scores in the CMA exam for that particular window. Then you need to take both parts in one window. So in my case, I took both parts in one window. That's the May-June window. So I took part 1 in the during the month of May. Then I took part 2 during the month of June, with some few weeks in between as well for me to be able to transition and prepare for the next part. So that's for the CMA exam structure. Then more on the CMA exam. So basically, the exam is academic in nature. That's why you don't really need to have work experience in order to pass, to ace the exam. In fact, now because more and more students, at least here in the Philippines, are getting more exposure into the CMA program, then they're even encouraged to take it right after graduation, so that one, they can still take advantage of the student fees. If you are a student and you take the CMA exam as a student or under that student category, it's much cheaper compared to if you take it as a professional. So that's one advantage that you can leverage. And then second, the topics are basically still fresh because you've taken many of these topic subjects in the university. So they are still fresh. Unlike when you already take it, once you already start working. Of course, when you start working, you don't really get to do everything. You just focus on particular areas of work. Maybe you're in tax, maybe you're in audit, maybe you're in accounting or a cost accountant in a manufacturing plant. So basically, you still need to learn or at least refresh yourselves of the other topics. So in my case, since I was already working for I think 10 years already when I took the CMA exam, I really needed to study again and refresh again myself on areas that I'm not exposed to daily in the course of my work. So that was really of course, an intentional exercise that I need to do to prepare for the exam. So similar to you, if you're already working and you're not really exposed to certain topics here, or you're not doing it in your daily work, then you also need to take that extra step to really relearn and refresh yourselves of those topics. So the exam has 2 parts. There's a MCQ, or the multiple choice questions. There are 100 items of them. And then there's essay, 2 essay questions. And altogether, we need to finish them in 4 hours. So actually, the 3 hours is for the multiple choice questions. That's 100 items. And then the remaining 1 hour is for the essay. So there are 2 essays, so approximately 30 minutes. You could budget 30 minutes per essay question or per essay scenario. I'm saying scenario because it's one scenario, but it has multiple questions. So it's really like a long problem. And then you need to reach a score of at least 360 over 500. It's a scaled score. So it's not the actual numbers, but the actual numbers are sort of converted or standardized into a scaled score. And in the scaled score, you should reach at least 360 over 500 in order for you to pass the exam. But of course, if you want to target and really aim for the award or to become a medalist later also, you need a much higher score. So usually in the past, what I've seen in terms of those people earning gold, silver, bronze, they usually have an average score of from 460 to 480 per part to earn the medal. So in terms of passing rate, I've got this from CMA Coach. On the average, it's 45% globally for both parts, 45, 45. But you can see here the distribution also per region, and for both parts, it could be different. As you can see, generally the passing rate for part 2 is higher than the passing rate for part 1. And in my experience, I don't know if this is true for the rest, but in my personal experience, when I took both part 1 and part 2, my part 2 is also, I would say, easier also than my part 1. I don't know if it's because when I took part 2, that was the second exam that I took, I was already more familiar with, the exam environment, the interface, and I was less anxious about the exam. So maybe that also contributed. But in general, uh, I was able to finish the exam earlier when I took the part 2 exam than compared to my part 1 exam. So I would think that I maybe I found the exam for part 2 a bit easier than part 1. So maybe that's a little true because also of the passing rates here. So the CMA being a prestigious certification, of course, is a challenging one. By design of the exam, as you can see, it's not only multiple choice, but it has also essays, which is a little bit different in the other exams. That's why it's one of also of the challenging exams to take. But it's possible. You can pass the exam. So it's not impossible to pass the exam. And many people have done it in the past. Like, as I've mentioned, over 100,000 now CMAs globally. So you can do it too. With, of course, with studying hard and also a little bit of strategy in taking the exam, it will not be impossible to pass the CMA exam. So what are some, at least based also on my experience, what are some of the tips that you can uh, explore and do while preparing for the exams? So number one, have a study plan. So normally the study plan would be around 4 to 6 months in terms of your preparation. So in my case, I took the exam May, June. That's the exam window, May, June. My formal review started January of that year. So January, Feb, March, April. So that's 4 months. But even if I started formally my review January, I already started reading and at least exploring the coverage, the notes that I have October the previous year. It wasn't really a formal study, but I already started at least skimming notes and exploring the coverage around maybe October. So October, November, December. But my formal review started in January. So you also need to plan. Of course, for me, it's a long preparation because I was working. So I wasn't a full-time student to really study and prepare for the CMA exam. So if you also are working already, so be mindful how you would plan your, or how would you design your study plan. So in my case, normally I would study 1 to 2 hours every night during weekdays because we have work. And then on the weekend, I attend my review classes. So normally that's the full weekend. So just be prepared to have some little sacrifice in terms of your weekends, in terms of your social activities. Anyway, for this period of time, because it's an investment also for you, right? It's an investment for you, and later on when you become a CMA, it's your return on your investment, so your ROI. So that's it. So first, be prepared by creating a study plan, and as much as possible stick to your study plan. If there are some delays, of course you monitor also your progress. If there are some delays, then create some catch up plan as well. And then second, here you should have already a target window or date to take the exam, because once you already have designated a target date to take the exam, you will need to work back your study plan. You have a deadline to meet, and therefore you need to be strict with your study plan and really stick to it. The problem with some students is that they do not identify at the beginning their target window to take the exam. So they just start studying and then just plan to take it once they're ready. But most often than not, those students, they end up, not taking the exam or just delaying and delaying the exam, because when you don't have a hard deadline, then sometimes you tend to be lenient, and you don't really become serious. You don't really focus on your study plan. But once you have, a target date to take the exam and a target window to take the exam, then you'll really be serious to study and to prepare, because of course you don't want to fail. That's number one. And then number two, the CMA program is expensive. It's not cheap. So therefore, you don't want to waste your money, right? So you want to pass the first time as well. So that's for the study plan. And here also, of course, depends on how you assess yourself. You can do self-study, or you can, of course, enroll in a CMA review program. The beauty of enrolling, of course, in a CMA review program is that you're given access to the latest study materials. You have your coach, your instructors, learning facilitators who can help assist you if you have questions, and they also help assist you in the administrative requirements, like in the registration for the exam, in the scheduling of the exam. And also, if you have a CMA review program, then normally just follow the schedule. They already have a schedule. They have already laid down the topics and when you need to study them, so that you can just follow it. And it's when you're doing it on your own, it's easier to deviate from the plans, because many activities sometimes comes in, and other priorities. So then number two, join a study group or find a study buddy. So this is important so that you can exchange notes. If there are topics that you're not very sure of, you can approach your study buddy or your study group. You can ask questions, and you can exchange ideas. You can support each other, also teach each other if there are more complex, difficult problems that you need to solve. So, and most importantly, you provide moral support to each other while doing the review, because of course the review could be very long, tedious, and could sometimes be tiring physically and mentally. So you need this support group as well to help you out. And third, I cannot underemphasize the importance of practice. So practice, practice, practice solving problems. Solve as many as you can. If you can, finish the whole test bank. In my case, I completed 100% the test bank of I took Wiley, and there are other also options like Climb and the rest. But whatever resources you're using, practice, really practice and practice if you can answer all the problems, because it's not only testing, of course, your mastery of the topic, but also you become familiar with how the questions are framed, what are the typical questions being asked, and how you would approach a similar question. So don't expect that in the actual CMA exam, similar questions will come out. So I haven't seen a question in the test bank that came out as is in the CMA exam. But at least, the way the questions are framed, or the types of questions being asked, they could be a little similar, so that in terms of approach, you can plan how to deal with that particular type of question once you encounter that in the CMA exam. Also, simulate exam condition. So remember, the exam is 4 hours, 100 items, multiple choice, and 2 essay questions. Try to simulate that. So sit down in a 4-hour exam. Make sure no one disturbs you, maybe in your own room. If you have an online course program, then sometimes I think most of them, they offer the flexibility for you to create your own exam, or to create your own quiz. So set up that exam that would contain 100 items, multiple choice, and also 2 essays, and take the timer for 4 hours. that would sort of simulate the exam. And of course, at the end of 4 hours, you would also be able to assess whether can you finish it in 4 hours, what are the topics where you think you need to study more, because these are the topics where you're taking more time of the 4 hours. And also to practice your mind and your body physically for the 4 hours exam. 4 hours is very long. And to be sitting there for 4 hours, you need the physical, the mental endurance to be there for hours focusing on the exam. So some people, some students I know, they're very good, they know the lesson, they can answer very complex problems, but what they lack during the exam is the endurance to stay there. They cannot sit down for hours. They haven't practiced taking an exam for 4 hours. So that's their challenge during the exam. So be a step ahead. Try to stimulate that and practice that so that during the exam day itself, you get used to it mentally and physically. Then this is also a good practice that I've done. Assess yourself progressively. When I shared earlier the coverage of part 1 and part 2, that's a lot of topics. And for this month, you only covered, let's say, cost accounting. Next month, you will cover internal control. By the time you are already on your topic number 5, you might have already forgotten what's topic number 1, and that was a few months ago that you've studied it. So try to assess yourself progressively. When I say progressively, that means when you get to topic 2, do a quiz of topic 2, but also include in your quiz items on topic 1. When you get to topic 3, quiz yourself on topic 3, but also include also questions from topic 2 and topic 1. And when you get to topic 4, do the same so that you don't forget about the previous topics. Even if you've already discussed them a few months ago, you continue to retain your knowledge because you include them in your progressive assessment. So that's a good practice that I've seen, that I've done, and I've seen also in some of the students, so that you keep the retention of topics, even for those earlier topics that you've discussed. Because again, the CMA has a very comprehensive coverage and lots of topics to cover. And then last, before the exam, try to relax. Do not cram. So the day before the exam, do not anymore pressure yourself to really study, but focus on relaxing and really conditioning your body and mind to prepare for the exam. The night before, if you can sleep early, have really a good night's sleep, long, good night sleep. I know, and I've experienced also, that sometimes anxiety kicks in the night before the exam, so sometimes it's difficult to sleep. But try to get some rest because you'll need that the next day during the day of the exam. And as I mentioned, it's 4 hours, so you really need to be prepared mentally and physically. So that's that's before the exam. What are the important things that you need to consider and prepare for before the exam? The other thing that I want to also emphasize is the calculator. As you know, not all calculators can be used in the CMA exam. So the recommendation is to use a basic calculator, a 6-function electronic calculator that is not programmable. There are some financial calculators that are approved. So these are the lists coming from IMA. But if you have other calculators, I suggest you at least check with your CMA program coordinators, or you can check directly with IMA just to make sure that they are allowable for use in the CMA exam. So I'm highlighting this because I want you to use the same calculators that you are practicing on when you take the actual CMA exam. Because in my case, when I was in the university and even after I started working, I was using, or at least we were using, financial calculators. That's the same calculator also that I used when I started reviewing. But later on, when we were already introduced to the allowable calculators, I realized that I have to change my calculator because my current calculator is not allowed in the CMA exam. So I have to shift to a more basic calculator. And therefore, I also need to shift my approach in terms of the calculation. So in using my previous financial calculator, it was much easier for me to calculate the present value factors. I can calculate it even without looking at my calculator. But after I shifted to the more basic calculator, which is allowable in the CMA exam, I have also to change the way I calculate my present value factor. That's an example that I want to cite because that's where I had the most challenge in terms of using the new calculator. So what I'm saying is we're already getting used to our calculators. If they are not allowable by IMA for the CMA exam, then change them as early as you can so that you can practice using them and it becomes easier, it becomes natural, especially during the CMA exam. The worst that could happen is that during the CMA exam, you will be using a different calculator that you haven't used at all, and it will, drag you and take time, especially if you commit some errors or mistakes in using the calculator. That is a mistake that you cannot afford because remember, you only have 4 hours to complete the full exam, and every second, every minute is very important. Now, during the exam, be early at the testing center. So I'm lucky because I live in the area just within the vicinity of the testing center. But for some of my colleagues that time who took the CMA exam, they live a little bit far. So for that, you need to be early at the testing center because you don't want to be stressed if you are caught in traffic, if you are 5 minutes away from the testing center and traffic is not moving. It's very stressful, and it impacts also your ability later on in taking the exam. When you're anxious, when you're stressed, it's not helping. So it's important that you're there early and you can settle things, and you are calm and peaceful when you take the exam and not stressed and anxious. Make sure the night before that you have everything you need. So you need an identification card, I think government issued card, your authorization letter to take the exam, just to verify your schedule, and your calculator. You don't need to bring the pen and the paper. At least in my experience, it was provided in Prometric. Prometric is our partner testing center. So they provide paper and pen for your calculations. So you don't need to bring those. Just your calculator. But just in case you don't have a calculator also, there's a mini calculator application in the CMA exam application itself. So when you take the exam, there's a calculator there that you can also use. But of course, again, since you are not used to using that, then it can again drag you and take time. So better if you have your own calculator that you've been using in the practice or in your study plan. And do not forget anything, because I have one friend who was very early in the testing center, but only to learn that she left her calculator, and so she was really stressed and of course very anxious. Good thing is she was able to borrow some calculators there, but then again, as I was telling you, it's difficult to shift calculators on the day of the exam when you haven't practiced on it or you haven't used it before. Then of course have breakfast before your exam, or if your exam is in the afternoon, ensure to have lunch before, and use the toilet before the exam, because during the exam in that 4 hours, at least in my experience here in the Philippines, we were allowed to take toilet breaks, but when you go out for a break, your timer doesn't stop. It doesn't pause. So if it takes you 5 minutes to go to the toilet and back to the exam room, then you lost 5 minutes of the 4 hours in the in the exam, and 5 minutes could be a lot of time. It could be a lot of questions already answered. Then, of course, wear comfortable clothes. Again, you'll be there for hours, and in my case, the exam room is also a little bit cold. So just wear comfortable clothes, and also if you're easily get cold, then at least try the thick one so that it doesn't bother you during the exam. And lastly, don't be nervous. So don't be anxious. So I know people, I know students who are, again, very good in the CMA review. They've got really high scores, but during the day of the exam itself, when the anxiety kicks in and they get overwhelmed, sometimes they suffer mental block, so they don't even know how to answer the questions, how to solve the problems because of the anxiety. So don't be nervous. So try some calming exercise, some breathing exercise if you feel a little bit nervous or anxious during the exam. So maybe some few tips on how to tackle the different exam problems. So particularly first, the MCQs or the multiple choice questions. So best practice is to spend at least average 1.5 minutes per question. So again, for the multiple choice questions, you have 3 hours to complete the 100 items. However, if you can, try to finish the MCQ part early, because any excess time that you have in finishing early the MCQ, it will be forwarded to the essay. It will be forwarded to the essay part. So in my case, I finished my multiple choice exam after 2.5 hours. I really planned and made sure that I finish my MCQs 2.5 hours instead of 3 hours when I took both parts of the exam. That means 30 minutes more added to my essay. The reason why I, of course, planned for that is because in the essay part, it's a lot of writing. And for me, based on my experience, I'm a little bit slow in terms of writing. So therefore, I really plan to add more time into my essay question. So for essay, I took the two essays for 1.5 hours, and then the MCQs for 2.5 hours. But of course, before you even plan to do that, make sure also that you are confident with your MCQs, that you have reviewed your MCQs, because if you don't pass the MCQ, even if you submitted it early, if you don't pass it, you will not proceed to the essay anymore. You know that you didn't pass if after you submitted your MCQ, you will proceed to the survey already. That means you cannot anymore proceed to the essay question. That means you did not pass your MCQ. So therefore, try to finish MCQ early, but also be confident that you pass the MCQ before you move on to the essay. And by the way, once you move to the essay, you cannot anymore go back to the MCQs. Therefore, you also need to be sure that all the questions where you had doubts, you have flagged in the MCQs, you have already reviewed them prior to submitting your MCQ and moving to the essay portion. Second, always read the question first. I always tell students, read the question first, because most often than not, in some of the problems, there are lots of information provided, but not all information is relevant to the question. Sometimes in a capital budgeting problem, it will give you cash flows on year 1, year 2, year 3, up to year 5. But the question is only asking for the cash flow on year 3. So therefore, read first the question so that you know what information is relevant, what information you will be looking for when you read the the full problem. Then be on the lookout for words such as not, except, false, least important, not true. Because sometimes we have a tendency to answer very fast and without really paying attention that what the question is actually looking for is the exception or the false statement. So be on the lookout for these terms, because there are lots of questions in the CMA exams that contains this types of question. So, and then don't be afraid to make an educated guess. there are some, even in my own experience, even if I got 480 over 500, there are some questions that I'm not really quite sure about my answer. So make an educated guess. In the MCQs in particular, use the elimination method. So in the actual CMA exam, actually there's a function there where uh, you can what to call that? You can put as a line to like scratch out a particular choice, like A, B, C, D. You want to scratch out choice C and D. You can do that. I think you just do the right click. So that's more of a process of elimination, so that you are increasing your probability of getting to the right answer. So if you see one or two choices that are really incorrect, you are really sure that they are incorrect, scratch them out, so that you just limit your analysis to the two questions that are, rather to the two choices that could be the correct answer. So also, if you do not know the answer, uh, you can make the educated guess, but also use the flag function. So there's a function to flag certain questions that you want to go back again and review. So you can flag them, but do not skip any question unanswered. Answer all questions. There is no penalty for an incorrect answer. So don't be afraid to choose an answer. Again, if you don't know the answer, at least make an educated guess, but do not skip a question, because you will not anyway be penalized for a wrong answer. At least you've given it a chance. If there are 4 choices, you still have 25% probability of getting the correct answer. Or if you've eliminated 2 wrong choices, that increases your probability to 50%, right, of getting the correct answers. And therefore, answer all questions. No? Answer all your questions. Just flag everything that you're not sure of, and then at the end of course, after completing item number 100, then you can always go back to the flag items to review and finalize your answers before you submit MCQs and before you move to your multiple choice, to your essay part. So that's for the MCQs. Now, tips on how to tackle the essays. So there are 2 essay questions. Um, they're not really essays, but more of long problems or scenarios. There are 2 long scenarios, and each scenario would have maybe some 5 to 6 questions each. The 5 to 6 question each, in my experience, they're not necessarily related. They're not necessarily just one topic. In fact, the 5 to 6 questions could be different topics on one scenario. So maybe the first 2, 3 questions were about financial statement analysis. And then the third, fourth question could be around internal control on the same scenario. And then the fifth question could be around technology or analytics. So they could be different topics on the same scenario. So therefore, what are the tips? So first, skim through the questions. Again, there are 5 to 6 questions. Read first, at least skim quickly the questions, because number one, it will help you again also to identify what would be the relevant information. So the scenario could be a little bit long. It's actually a form it's in a PDF document that you need to open. So if you read first the scenario without skimming through the questions, it seems like everything is important. It seems like everything is relevant. But in fact, only a few could be relevant to particular questions. So read first, skim through first the questions. Then second, of course, read the scenario, and highlight the relevant information. The good thing about, again, the CMA exam is there's a functionality there to highlight. There's like a pen, a highlighter that you can use when reading the scenario, the PDF file. So I use that a lot when answering the essays, because again, not all information would be relevant to you. So to quickly identify later on and go back to the scenario to quickly identify the relevant information, you can use the highlighter to focus your attention to those important information. Then be succinct and clear with your answers. So Be brief. You don't need to dwell in just one question and prepare a very, very long answer. Again, you only have 1 hour technically for the essays. Two essays, so that's 30 minutes per essay. So be brief, but make sure that you are able to answer the question. So therefore, this is not like an English subject exam where you need to have an introduction or a body, a conclusion, but be straightforward with your answer. In fact, bullet points could be okay. You don't need to really structure them in a paragraph format. Bullet points to highlight your answers could be okay, and make sure that your answers are clear. So when you try to therefore answer the essay question, be on the lookout again on what the question is, on the verbs. So are you asked to compare, to contrast, to analyze? Sorry, there's a missing word there. So if you're asked to compare, then compare. Don't do other things. Don't do something else. If you're being asked to analyze, then perform the analysis and give your commentaries on the analysis. So be careful what is being asked of you in the essay. So if you're asked to enumerate, then enumerate. If you're asked to explain or define, then explain or define. Focus on that and don't do something else. Again, you have limited time, so you have to be strategic in terms of the use of that time. As I've mentioned, you can use bullet points. Your answer doesn't have to be in paragraph forms. You can use bullet points. And if you're being asked to provide or enumerate something, at a minimum, at least provide 3 answers. Provide at least 3 answers. If you know more, then feel free to add more. But again, you have to manage your time. So you have to be able to answer all questions, not just one question. Even if you answered one question and you enumerated 12 items under that one question, if you're not able to finish the essay, you will not earn points for the rest of the other questions. Therefore, you have again to be strategic. So therefore, what I'm saying is, at a minimum, at least provide 3 answers for that certain question, then ensure to finish the rest of the other questions. If you have more time and you know more, then go back to that question and add 4, 5, 6, or whatever, if you can, but only if you have time. What else? Budget. As I've mentioned, you only have 1 hour unless you have forwarded certain time from your MCQ to your essay. Budget at least 30 minutes per essay question. So be on the lookout of the timer. So in my case, while answering the first essay question, I really already took note of when I should be ending the first essay question. If in case I did not finish the first essay question and I already reached my designated time, the time that I assigned, I move already to the next essay question just to make sure that I was also able to cover the second essay question. But with more time, go back to the first essay question to, of course, do the review, proofread your answers, and check if you miss anything. But again, 1 hour could seem to be a long time, but when answering essay questions, actually it's a short time. So therefore, really be intentional about the time management and be strategic about it. Review your answers. So again, review in terms of did you answer the question correctly? In terms of the structure or organization of your questions, is it understandable? Is it clear? Because take note that in the CMA exam, while checking the multiple choice questions is automated, the checking of the essay part is done by human checkers. These are not automated. That's why you need to make sure that your answers are clear, they are understandable, because when human checkers, of course, check your answers, they should be able to get the point that you're trying to drive at. Aside from the content, review also the basic English requirements. So in terms of the grammars and spelling. So CMA checkers are also on the lookout for errors in terms of grammars, in terms of spelling, and they could give penalties if you have those errors in grammars and spelling. Of course, what we want would be additional points here, not deductions. So also try to proofread. And in my experience, even myself, I had to update, edit a lot of spellings and also incorrect grammars in my essays when I tried to review. And it's a bit, well, it's a bit natural because sometimes when you're typing the essay, sometimes your mind can run faster than your fingers typing in the computer. So sometimes you skip a word, you skip an article. You can catch that once you review, or perhaps your spelling is wrong, you just interchange some letters. So it could happen, especially when you're typing very fast, or where when you're thinking very fast and your typing cannot catch up with you. So it happens. Therefore, again, the ideal is that you have enough time not only to answer but also to review. But of course, if you don't have enough time, then just make sure that you've answered everything. The CMA checkers, as long as they see a point in what you're trying to drive at, they would give points. And again, there could be some questions in the essay that you also don't know the answer. Then make an educated guess. Don't leave it blank. Similar to the MCQs, don't leave any question blank. Just try to give it a shot. If you really don't know the answer, my suggestion is go back to the principles. Like in finance, we have the 10 basic tenets of finance, the 10 basic principles of finance. Then go back to those principles if you don't really know the answer. The CMA checkers would know, and if they recognize certain valid point in your answer, even if they are not the accurate answer, the bullseye answer, they would still give points to your at least to the answer that you have provided. So when CMA checkers are checking, they are on the lookout for answers that they can give points to. So don't leave any answer blank. At least give an educated answer. If in the worst case you don't know the answer, or you forgot, that answer in the essay question. And then, of course, after the exam, relax. Of course, enjoy, because you're done with your exam. As much as possible, do not compare. Do not even check your answers. It will just, add to the anxiety. Anyway, you cannot change your answers in the exam. So it is what it is. And be patient, because result will not be out until 6 weeks after the last week of that window. Not from your exam week, but from I think the last week of the window. So it takes 6 weeks. It takes that long because, again, the essay part is being checked manually by human checkers. So it takes time to do that. So expect to receive the result via email, or you can also check your IMA account in the IMA portal. It will also be available there, your result. Of course, again, if you reach 360 out of the 500 skill score, then congratulations, that's a pass. So you passed the exam. And then, of course, assuming that you pass both parts already, then you'll need to process your other requirements. So you submit your work experience, because for the CMA designation, you need to have at least 2 relevant years of experience. You need to fill out that form where you need to detail your work experience, your roles, and what you do. So the IMA will not verify that with your employers. Seldom do they. But of course, you need to be honest with your roles and your experience. Again, that's ethics, and the IMA would of course expect you to, of course, be ethical, demonstrate, ethics in your submissions. Then finally, after some time, a few months, you'll receive your certificate mailed all the way from the US to your respective homes, doors, and your license number. Then you can officially use your designation as a certified management accountant. That 3-letter in your name, CMA. And of course, it doesn't stop there. Of course, you have to continuously study and complete your CPE requirements every year. So you need to do that. The good thing with IMA is there are lots of free learning materials. There are lots of free webinars, whether on demand or those that are live webinars being sponsored by IMA and some other partner organizations. So you'll not have a problem, of course, in terms of your CPE. But most importantly, of course, because you want to sharpen the saw to make sure that you constantly upskill yourself in terms of the different relevant topics in finance and accounting. So, of course, if you manage to get an award, you will be recognized by CMA. So, for professionals, there's a gold, silver, bronze medal, and also a certificate of distinguished performance. This is global, based on your scores globally. And also for the student category, there's also another set of awards. So there's one for professional, there's one for students, and you will be receiving your medal with, engraved with your name. So therefore, aim high. Do not just aim to pass, but also aim to shoot for the medals if you can. It's also a wonderful achievement to be recognized globally, to be receiving one of the highest scores. So it's an honor that you can bring to yourself and also to your country, to India, when you have awardees in the CMA examination. So that's it. So I'll just close with this. So success is no accident. It is really hard work, perseverance, learning, studying, sacrifice, and most of all, love what you are doing or learning to do. As I've mentioned in the previous slides, the study plan could last for 4 to 6 months, and it's a long time. So love and enjoy what you're doing. It's really one of the secret sauce as well to your success. So thank you so much, everyone, for your generous attention.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rodrigo. This is a great session, and definitely you have, our students are really happy. In fact, a lot of questions you answer, a lot of you clarified actually how to tackle the MCQ type of questions and essay type of questions, which is definitely the students are always, asking the questions how to write the essay type of questions, and one couple of questions. In fact, on behalf of student, I would like to ask that before you write the exam, how many days before, how many mock tests you practice? Whether you practice a couple of mock tests or you practice some 8 to 10 mock tests. So we would like to understand that before the exam, how well prepared you were.
Before the exam, because a week before the exam, I took already in my case, I took a study leave so that I don't have to work anymore a week before the exam. So every day I took 2 full sets of exam, like that full 100 and essay. So for that week, except for the last day before the exam, where I already sort of relaxed and rested my mind. But yep.
Yeah. So basically, so mock tests, how much you used to get actually, because sometimes definitely your whatever your score is a dream score. So so what do you say about your mock test score? Whether how much you used to score, like?
Yeah. So funny, during the first few months when I started, there was a exam where I scored only 75 out of 100, and it's okay.
Yeah,
it's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. But towards the end, there were exams that I would perfect, but there were exams that I would have a range of score between 90 to 95. And again, it's okay. Don't pressure yourself to really get
right.
100 in the exam, because for me, what's important is when you commit a mistake, an error in one of the questions, you study it, you check why you made the mistake. And in fact, for most of my experience, the mistakes that you get, they're the questions that you will really remember and recall during the CMA exam. Not even the questions where you got it wrong, right the first time, but the questions that you got it wrong, it will really have a strong recall during the CMA exam. So it's okay. Don't be afraid to get wrong answers, but just take a step back and really understand why you got it wrong.
Okay. And regarding the essay type of question, basically, you must have practiced a lot, right? The writing and all this thing. So, because a different type of scenario they can ask, and we have to make sure that you have to write the key terminology. So, so what exactly your suggestion? When we practice the essay type of questions. So, do you think that the reading a textbook multiple times will help you?
In my case, of course, reading would help. But in my case, I wrote my own notes from the review and then from studying in the book. I just took out the most important concepts, terminologies, and I wrote it in my own notes so that those are the notes that I'm reading during my next phase of review. I'm not anymore going back to the detailed textbook, but rather just skimming through my notes. I already know not just terms, but also some relationships, like especially on, let's say, financial ratios. What's the impact when you increase this? What's the impact to those types of relationships? I also took down terminologies, some basic enumerations that I really need to memorize because perhaps it's an important topic. So I have my own notes, and it's easier for me to review those notes that I've written.
Yeah, thank you. So, you can also ask the questions. Anyone can unmute and you can ask the question, please, if you have any. Anyone would like to ask the questions?
Sir, hi, Anju this side. I wanted to ask one question, that how many mock exams is suggested before actually going to write the final exam, just to be sure that we are fully prepared?
Yeah, so well, there's no really one number like that would fit for all. I would still suggest that you assess yourself. But in my case, again, the last 1 week of the exam, I took 1 to 2 mock exams every day just to practice myself, not just to assess my mastery, but also, again, a feel of the exam, sitting there for 4 hours to condition your mind and your body. I know some of my friends who finish a particular only focus on a particular area where they are weak. But for me, if you can, the more that you can practice, then the better.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, RODRIGO.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, sir. Good evening. Praveen here.
Good evening, Praveen. Yeah.
Sir, I'm working professional and I'm not getting sufficient time. Tell me like, how much time I have to spare per day so I can, target it. CMA.
Yeah. So in my case, we're the same. I'm also a working professional. So what I did is every night I spend at least 1 to 2 hours to review. I don't need to finish a particular topic, but at least that 1 to 2 hours I spend to go over my notes or to read some topics in the textbook or to listen to videos of the review. And then during the weekend, I spend the full weekend. So what I suggest also is, because you are a working professional, make sure that you align with your boss, with your manager, that you are actually studying for the CMA exam. I'm sure they would be understanding as well in terms of giving you support. So that in my case, I was able to arrange some days off from work as well to really focus on the exam. But in terms of the number of hours, that's between 1 to 2 every night, and then the full weekend I spend for the review.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Yeah, hi, good evening. My name is Shranjay. I just have a question. Like you mentioned, you started studying from around October, and then you intensified your studies from Jan and basically aimed for May. So, like, how did the progression happen, like from start till the exam date? Like, I mean, what was your strategy really, like in terms of approaching the studies and tackling it?
Yeah. So the formal review, because I actually went into a review school, that started in January. So from January to April, before the exam window, I really just followed the structure of the review program. So whatever was the topic being discussed, I also just followed that. I did not deviate from the program. Whatever the schedule of the review classes, I just really attended them. So that's in terms of the review. But when I started in October, as I've mentioned, that's more of just an informal one. I just started reading the topics where I feel I need to refresh myself on, because as I've mentioned, I've been working for almost 10 years already, and not all of the topics are anymore familiar to me, or at least I really need some refresher. So I started reading in October informally the topics where I do not have any more exposure in my work, so that I sort of kind of refresh myself and in preparation as well to the formal review that started in January, so that when the formal review kick off in January, I'm not starting from really from scratch. I already have some idea, and then I can catch up with the lessons, and I can catch up with the answering of all the topics. So that was my strategy then.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shranjay.
Yeah, any questions? Okay, I think so. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. I can convey the questions to Rodrigo. Really, we are thankful to you, Rodrigo. In fact, it's a great insight, and you also provided great informations, which definitely would help our Indian students. And thanks a lot, Rodrigo. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's my honor to join you tonight. I hope you learned from my experience, from my sharing. And I hope, of course, all of you here will become CMAs in the future, and maybe some awardees. I'm looking forward.
Sure then. Thank you very much, Rodrigo. We'll keep in touch. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you.
Bye.